Hello, everyone. Welcome back again for another Becker Vineyards virtual tasting. We're so glad everybody could join us. My name is Rebecca Nelson. I'm the wine club director here at Becker Vineyards. We've got a great lineup for you tonight. To get started, I want to make sure everybody's got the correct wine in their glass. We are tasting the 2017 Claret this evening. This one actually just won gold at the 2019 San Francisco International Wine Competition, so we're really excited about that. Tonight with us, we have Dr. Joseph Becker. We also have our winemaker, Jon Leahy, and we've invited some members of the Canada family who are some of our growers. So I'm really excited for everybody to get to know this wine. It smells incredible, has a great mouthfeel, and it's just a really great red blend that's got almost a little bit of everything in there. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Joe Becker and to Jon, and they'll get you guys started. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Joe, welcome to the broadcast. Okay, I don't think Joe can hear us, but I'm going to get this thing started while we wait for the delay here. So, hey, Joe, welcome. Sorry, I think I jumped the gun a little bit. So I want to welcome everybody to our tasting of the 2017 Claret wine. This is the bottle that you all should have tonight, and if it is, then you will have the correct wine. So I want everybody to go ahead and pour a glass and give it a bit of a swirl. So tonight we have joining us, we have Christy and Daniel Canada from the Canada Family Vineyards, which their grapes play a predominant role in our blend tonight. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about family farming and what it's like to be the second generation in a business, since we have both Joe Becker and the second generation of the Canadas on here. So if you have your wine now, is an appropriate time to go ahead and give it a swirl and give it a sniff and give it a taste. All right. So, Joe, do you have your wine? Okay. Guys, I apologize. I think we're having some issues. It seems our guests cannot hear me currently. So what I'm going to do is take you through this wine and see if we can get everybody back online with us. So go ahead and give it a swirl and give it a taste. It's absolutely wonderful. So some of the things that we have in this wine, we have a blend of the 5 dominant Bordeaux varietals here in Texas. We have Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Cabernet Franc. And so these absolutely fantastic varietals put together. It's actually dominated by the Merlot, second by the Cabernet, and then on down from that, from Petit Verdot, Malbec to just a small percentage of the Cabernet Franc. So the blend we put together on this wine every year, we go through multiple permutations. And we have several vineyards that grow Cabernet and Merlot for us, including our own vineyard here in Stonewall. One of the things that we really like to do is kind of just let everything age separately, and then we put it back together at the very end, right before bottling. For about 3 or 4 months before bottling, we'll come up with the final blend, and then we put it back to barrel, let it mellow out, and then we get ready to bottle. The second thing that we like to do is keep it in bottle for several months prior to releasing to the market. So I'm going to ask one more time, Joe, or the Canadas, if you guys can hear me.
Am I on?
Yes, sir. You are on, and we are live.
I think that
I apologize.
It's okay. I think what's interesting is when I think about where does Claret come from? What is the phrase Claret come from? And it comes from and I have to bring this up because I love history. That's something my father instilled in me. And Claret comes from the Middle Age term for sort of what was called a lighter Bordeaux. It was vinum clarum or vinum clar. It was less skin contact, so it was almost what we would think of as a rosé today. And it became vinum clarum, and then it became Claret, C-L-A-R-E-T, different from Claret, which is a grape. And And then in the area of Aquitaine and the southern Bordeaux is when they began to produce these darker, richer Bordeaux-style wines. And Claret
Hmm.
generally represents the five Bordeaux grapes: Cab, Sauvignon, Cab Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. And one of the things that I think about with
Yep.
Claret, just because I'm a history nerd, is that Eleanor of Aquitaine, the famous medieval woman, was one of the first to really drink it, first to love it. And so it's when I think of inspiring women in my life, I think about my mother. I think about my father's mother, Floyce. My father, Richard, is named for Richard the Lionheart, who was Eleanor of Aquitaine's third son. And I think about Brenda Canada. And so, I think Claret has an interesting history, and it
Hmm.
ties in very well with winemaking in Texas.
It does. And while you guys couldn't hear me before, I went through our blend with this wine to get everybody up to speed and to get them to let it air out, get a little sip going. And I'm going to ask, and I apologize for everybody at home, but the Canadas, can you all hear us yet? Okay. All right. So, Joe, I have to ask, what's it like being in business with your dad for the winery?
You know, it's been a blessing to me. As
We
I
can
as
hear
I
you
alluded,
through Facebook, but
there
we
we
can't
go.
see anything on our.
Uh,
Okay. All right.
I will. I'll answer this question. I'd love to hear what the Canadas had to say. It's been an absolute blessing. My father and I both physicians. We practiced medicine together, and when I was growing up, I have a chemistry degree from the University of Chicago, and so my father asked me one summer to help me work with the winemaking, and so it's been nothing but luck. Medicine's my first love. It's the wonderful art and science, as is getting to be a part of winemaking.
Now, you also have your brother Will,
Yes.
whom I very much enjoy the amount of time that we get to spend when he and his family come out to visit, and they're really fun folks to get to talk to. He and his wife and their kids, and it's always nice to see them. So, are there any unique challenges because you guys all are, of course, spread out throughout the country? As far as unique challenges, yes, you're a family, but then you're also in business and running a pretty nice sized business. What are some of the just real briefly? What would
Sure.
be some of the challenges?
I think that one of the things that my father actually instilled, I think, a couple things in both of us. One would be that we were all very competitive people. But I think that when it comes to the wine business, I think that we are always trying to make the best wine that we can. We've never had the attitude that we're in Texas, we can just make whatever Texas can make. We've always had the attitude that we can make old style French wines from these amazing Texas grapes. And then
Mhm.
I think, not to discount my mother, who probably was the most competitive person in the family and probably the smartest also, I would say had just pretty big role in that as well.
No, because it reverbs.
Right on. So, Daniel, Christy, can you hear us? Yeah. Look, I apologize. It seems like we're having some feed issues, some internet issues here. I can see the Canadas, and for those of you, if you have any questions for them specifically about their vineyard, about the grapes, please type them in. We'll get some answers, but I don't think we're going to be able to maintain a connection with them for very much longer. It looks like we may have dropped them already. So if they do come back, I promise we will get to them and we will get to some good questions on that. So just to briefly talk about them. So the grapes that are in here that do come from the Canadas, we have two grapes, the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Malbec. That vineyard is outside a town called Plains in Plains, Texas. It's up in far west Texas. One of my favorite things about being here in Central Texas is I have to go north to get to West Texas. That always gives me a kick every year when I think about it that way. But the vineyard up there is absolutely pristine. Mrs. Canada, Brenda Canada, is the one who's in charge of that vineyard, and she runs an extraordinarily tight ship. The vines could have been in any premier cru vineyard anywhere in the world. The way that vineyard is structured, the Cabernet is just brilliant fruit. The Malbec is nice and rich. It's got a really nice roundness to it. So we're very excited to be able to use that fruit from the Canada vineyards. Joe, what was the first time that you went up there, that you saw the vineyard? What was your impressions?
My first, I went up there when I was a little bit older, so I had a little bit more knowledge of wine. And I think that what struck me is when you think about, some of the great clarets that as the Gironde enters France from the Atlantic, kind of south and west, you get the area that's called Grave, literally the gravelly soil. And this is like looking at Mrs. Canada's
Right.
soil is like gravel on steroids. It's that deep rock. I'm sure that the Canadas could comment to the fun of having to drill through the rock just to plant the vineyard.
Oh, hey, it looks like they can hear us finally.
Yes.
Yeah. Joe, I'm going to interrupt you there before we
Please.
lose you again, guys.
Right. You wanna talk
Daniel,
to him?
Chris,
Can y'all hear us
again,
now?
I'm glad you're joining us. Yes, we can. We can. Could you speak to us about being the second generation farmers and the vineyard and what your aspirations are for that? I think there may be a bit of a delay. Okay, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties maintaining connection. Yeah, I think we're having a bit too much of a delay. So
I guess hopefully this is working correctly. Welcome to the rural areas where you don't have quite the internet connection you do in town, but
Keep going. Keep going.
yep,
yeah,
you're good. Yeah, I think. Yeah, no, Daniel, I can hear you.
Just keep talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, Joe, are you okay? It looks like we're having a heck of a delay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're here. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Feet. Oh.
Just keep going.
And so that's the way we plan it. It's very labor intensive, but it's worth it because the taste of the grapes in the end is well worth the effort you put in.
Okay. Well, I looks like I may be frozen too.
You guys hear me okay?
Okay, Joe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You guys hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've actually lost the Canadas.
Okay.
Yep, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. I think
Okay.
I think the story of Mrs. Canada is kind of interesting. In Texas winemaking, she's referred to as the grape whisperer. She told me that her father, she's a retired school teacher of many years, and her father had left her some money to plant grapes. And if you're out in West Texas, this particular plot of grapes is. It doesn't seem to fit in. It's a completely different soil, rock, everything, and it gives off these very unique flavors and aromas. And she's called the Grape Whisperer. We don't have our GM Brett Pernew on here to comment, but many times we've been ready to harvest based on sugar and acidity, and she walks out into the vineyard and says, "I've walked around with my grapes, and I just don't think we're ready." So
Yeah, I remember a particular pretty interesting fall. It's been several years ago. We were tracking a storm on the radar that was coming out of New Mexico, heading straight for it with a bunch of hail. A pretty bad cell that was coming out there, and we called, and it was basically an hour out. And she's like, "Well, I don't think we're quite ready." And da 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 da. And we're like, "Well, we want to salvage some of this crop. We don't want it to get hurt." And she's like, "Well, she was very patient with us. Swear to you, right before it hit the vineyard, that cell split in half. It went around the vineyard and then reformed on the far side, and she never got hit. And after that, all I say is yes, ma'am, and I go with it from there. But I think we may have some audio from. Yes, exactly. Okay, welcome back.
I don't know how long we'll be here, but we're here for a second at least.
Yeah, then please, Daniel, it's always a pleasure to deal with you in the vineyard, and I always think of you as being a very conscientious person. What are your goals as the second generation farmer for your vineyard and the grapes?
One of our I have basically two goals. One is, of course, to make a living that supports my family. But my second goal is I'm tired of being seen in Texas as the rest of the country thinks you're less than as a wine region. And so I would really like to beat California at their own game. That's my goal. I want to produce a high quality wine and do it well.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're well on the way with a couple of double gold medals from the San Francisco International with the fruit from your vineyard. So I don't think it'll be too much longer before the rest of the country catches up to what we in Texas know, which is to make great wine, you got to have great dirt. We have it right here in Texas.
Absolutely.
So, guys, I want to get on to, and I want to get everybody with their glass of wine to give another swirl and sniff at home, to give it a taste. It's starting to open up. It is just absolutely fantastic. So both your Cabernet and your Malbec are in this wine, and you can really start to smell those deep, earthy tones from that Cabernet in here.
And
so give it a swirl and a taste.
I have to say that
something that always.
And I will encourage everyone at home. Yeah.
Something that always makes me smile is when we drink
Keep going,
our
guys.
wines, as Daniel will say that he can taste the caliche and taste the dirt in our wine sometimes, which might not sound super appetizing, but it is good. And it's whenever you work that hard out in the field, you know what the dirt tastes like, you know what it is like to be out there. So it's a really special thing to be able to taste those qualities in our grapes.
It really is, but my only advice to Daniel would be start drinking it out of a glass instead of out of the dirt. So it might help. I'm joking. You really can taste the minerality that when you start sipping on this wine. It is an absolutely fantastic thing. So yeah, that's so one of the things I want to ask while we have you here, what do you like to pair food-wise with this wine? Go ahead, Daniel and Christy. What do you guys like to pair at home, food-wise?
I think a great thing about this wine specifically, and I'll tell y'all, we are not the fanciest wine drinkers in the whole world. We just love growing great grapes.
Okay, I think we may be experiencing one of those delays.
But what I love about Claret, it's just really versatile. It's a sweet wine. It's good with a lot of different things. In fact, I was talking with one of my friends the other day, and a bottle of Claret was on her list of things that they needed for survival while they were social distancing at home.
Perfect. You have Joe, what are some of the foods that you like to pair with this wine?
Well, Jon, I would just say number one, you're very modest. You're an excellent winemaker, and I think for people at home that don't know what a double gold medal means, it means that 64 judges in an international wine competition in San Francisco have given that very same wine a gold medal. And Jon is responsible for a number of the gold medals for our winery. So I think that's something to be proud of. I also think that one of the things that's unique about this vineyard is that it gives such wonderful dark fruit notes that the wines from the Canada Vineyard age incredibly well in the bottle. And so, but in terms of food, I've got some tenderloins downstairs ready to go as soon as I get off this phone call.
Nice. That's perfect. That's perfect. So one of the things that we like to do at home is a nice pasta with a marinara. And I have to admit, I love taking this beautiful wine and dumping about a cup of it in the marinara sauce and then drinking it with the pasta dish. That's one of our favorite at home.
Great.
And it always makes Jody very nervous when I open up a nice bottle of wine, like the Claret or even the straight Canada Cab, and start dumping it in the food. And she just looks at me like I'm crazy. And I will not cook with wine that I'm not willing to drink. So that's my only rule. If I won't put it in my glass, I won't put it in my food. So
that's a great.
So guys, we've got a couple of questions before we wrap things up here. Joe, specifically to you. Can you explain why there's Les Trois Dames, the three ladies on the label?
So, as I recall, Les Trois Dames refers to Mrs. Canada, and I don't remember Jon. Can you the other two on the label?
Mrs. Wilmoth.
Mrs. Wilmoth, thank you.
And Mrs. Bingham.
Mrs. Bingham, there you go. So for those of you who don't know, Mrs. Wilmoth, Jet Wilmoth, some of our growers from Tokyo, and the Bingham, some of our growers as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any before we drop the feed from West Texas, can you give us a couple of closing remarks, Daniel, Christy, and lead us out with a nice toast?
Yeah, I would just like to thank the Beckers and Brett and you, Jon, and Rachel, and for all the hard work you do for our family. You take our grapes and make them exquisite, and that's going to help us beat California. And so I thank y'all for the opportunity you've given us. And I also thank those people out there who purchase the wines with our grapes in them, because they give us a great opportunity to work together as a family and help and grow together out here as a family. And it's just a wonderful opportunity. And I'm very grateful to them and you.
Okay, and I will make a toast, I think, to home. As we all find ourselves at home in these present days, home is a great place to be, and there's nothing better than opening a great bottle of wine and enjoying our time together at home. So let this time at home not be a drudgery, but let it be celebrated and savored.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, Joe. So thank you to the Canadas, by the way, for joining us. And got a couple more questions here before we wrap it up. So one, Joe, how is Claret properly pronounced?
Well, Claret is actually the anglicized term for Claret, Clairet. But the British began to pronounce it as Claret. So it's more of an anglicized word that descends from that original medieval production of Claret. And I think, Jon, you could speak more of this than I could, but you won't find that many Clarets in the grocery store. You know, it's us and maybe one or two others.
That's true. Yeah, it is now a protected term with treaties between the U.S. and the EU on protected won protected wine regions and protected terms. So it really is nice that we're able to use it, but in recognition to the folks who, for the last multiple centuries, have really poured families' heart and soul into developing those regions. We owe a lot to our cousins across the ocean, and in as much as we owe to all of the endeavors and the hard work of our folks here in making our wine industry in the last 100 years.
I think it's worth mentioning that it's worth mentioning the Coppola blend. So Coppola is one of the other primary producers of a Claret label in the United States, and this past year we produced a joint sort of Claret blend with them, made from half California, half Texas grapes, called Unita, and that was a very fun collaboration.
Oh, it was. It really was a lot of fun to do. So one more question here before we wrap it up, and it's always going to, my favorite is, how long did it spend in oak? This wine spent 2 full years in barrel, almost an equal blend between American and French oak. So that and about 30% new oak. Once we put the blend together, we put it back to barrel, and then we bottled it a few months later, and we kept it in bottle for about 6 months before release. This is not our reserve wine. We did this. This is a market wine, a wine that we distribute throughout the state of Texas. So this is a wine you can go to your favorite bottle shop, your favorite store that sells wine, be it a grocery store or bottle shop, and find that on the shelf. So we stress equally that we treat all of our wines as if they were the pride and joy in the top pinnacle, because they are. We're showing respect both to the families that grow these grapes, to the folks that we work with at the winery, all the hard work they put in, and equally, the Beckers have always told me in every meeting, it doesn't matter where the wine is sold, what the price point is. We're not putting our name on it if it isn't the best wine we're capable of producing. So that truly is something that was instilled to me in the last 9 years of working there, that we want to produce the best product. One more thing, Joe, and I want you to speak to this because it's very important. The tree on the label. So I'm going to show everybody again. Could you tell us the story and the significance behind the tree?
Yes. So the tree has significance to my family and to myself. I would say to the family because our labels, for the most part, are all, with some exception, are paintings from a childhood friend of my father's named Tony Bell, who grew up with Dad in Abilene. And he was sort of everybody knows he was kind of an artistic genius, that he had won a automotive design contest when he was about 15 or 16, and Yale had offered him a free ride to go to college there, which he turned down because he didn't think it was Texas. He ended up going to the University of Texas. But that particular tree, that painting, is such a memory to me, because when I was little, one of the eccentric things that he did was to hold a croquet tournament every year on the same day as the Kentucky Derby under that tree. So I spent many years as a child playing under that tree.
Right on.
Before everybody would rush in and see if their horse had won. But that tree has a lot of meaning to me.
Fantastic. Well, a shout out to Casey Roomer from NOLA. She joined us and wanted to give a shout out there. So I kind of like to see where, when I glance down at the feed to see who's coming in from where. One final thing before we close up here, the blend. Somebody asked about the blend. So it's 40% Merlot, 30% Cabernet Sauvignon, 15% Malbec, 10% Petit Verdot, and 5% Cabernet Franc. So cheers to everybody.
Cheers.
May you all have wonderful health and great wine. Have a good night.
And thank you to our wonderful winery staff for keeping all this going. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.